Hello. I was Anna Paula Carocci till a week ago. Now Paula Smeaton. I'm just going to give Jai a second to
Is this the second one?
bring up my visuals. But I wanted to share with you tonight my passion for a topic which generated my research on self-regulatory techniques in managing psychiatric disorder. So, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how I've been conducting this research, and we'll talk about that. But in opening, and if we could move to the, do I move to the next slide? Or do you? So let's move on. In opening, in my paper, I just, posed the question, what is perfect mental health? So, can I ask for one or two opinions? Maybe somebody has, what is an idea of, what is one key word to mental health, maybe?
Equanimity.
Equanimity, stability, yeah.
Happiness. Happy?
One thing that kind of seems to permeate all of those concepts might be balance, right? So balance seems to be something that will bring happiness or bring stability, or, right? Okay, so moving on from there, okay. So we would have to find balance in order to find something that looks like perfect mental health. That was just my first little conclusion in that. Moving on, my question was, well, how do we look as a nation here in America as far as mental health? And of course, there are a lot of statistics, but what I found is that this statistic I thought was pretty interesting. 2012, there were an estimated 9.6 million adults age 18 or older in the U.S. with SMI, which is mental disease. This represented 4.1% of all U.S. adults. Well, a year later, it went up to 18.5. So I guess this posed the question to me, wow, what happened, right? And that opened the door to a discussion about over-diagnosing. So is it that we have diagnosed more people, or is it that more people are imbalanced? What has been going on? So that's what the second part of my paper looks at. And so that's the PDF that I sent you I wanted to talk about. There's a statistic that brings up something called a DALY, which is Disability Adjusted Life Years, which equals years of life lost due to a disability. So due to any disability, and these are them, this is the World Health Organization statistics. Globally, mental disorders, number 3, neuropsychiatric disorders are in third place for number of days lost, let's say, of life. So the person has been institutionalized, cannot work, or cannot function in some way. The next one shows in America the importance of seeking this balance, because in America, that is our number one top leading disease or disorder that contributes to days of lost activity, right? So neuropsychiatric disorders come in first place in America. Of course, all of this mental health discussion increases with every episode of a school shooting, of the pilot that ran the airplane into a mountain. All of this spurs this discussion. What are we doing? Is it the guns? Is it the mental health? Where's the culprit, right? So that's the second part of what I go into in my thesis. Then the next slide. So where does it come from is the next question that I pose. So it could come from a number of places. Skipped one. There it is, yes. So where does it come from? My research returns several different factors that can lead to a mental illness. That could be having suffered abuse, genetic proclivity, behavioral patterns, coping mechanisms. It could be a mystical experience, which is a lot of times very confused with mental disorder and ends up having a misdiagnosis and then going down a wrong path. It could be substance related, trauma related, social anxieties. You have the binge eating or other things that are caused by a biopsychosocial model. And neurochemical imbalances as well. So part 4 of my paper goes into discussing how the chemical imbalances in the brain can cause mental illness. When I'm talking about mental illness, I'm talking about psychiatric disorders such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, major depression, personality disorders, panic disorders, things of that nature. So I go into discussing the physiology of mental illness and all of those factors. Something that I found still on that topic that I thought was really interesting is how these numbers, so it's not all neurological imbalance. A lot of the numbers point to abuse, as they do in violence as well, people who are institutionalized for other reasons. So a lot of times it's having suffered severe trauma in childhood, not being nourished as a child, and not finding that balance that you need in your environment to become a mentally healthy individual. So moving on, I decided to see, okay, so what happens when you are diagnosed with a disease, and that's the next slide. So how does that happen? Okay, so you're institutionalized, you arrive there, and you arrive and there's an initial medical evaluation. So they evaluate you, and then there's a psychiatric assessment. So the medical is like, okay, does he have allergies? More medical aspect. Then there's a psychiatric assessment, more behavioral and psychology and things as such. And after that's done, then they will come with a pretty standard protocol of stabilization, which involves invariably drugs, which are antipsychotics, benzodiazepine that increase GABA, and other drugs that are used are commercial drugs, Abilify, Risperidol, Zoloft, Seroquel, etc. So that's the standard. You come in, you go through this little evaluation, they treat you, stabilize you. The thing is, number 4, treatment. That's a really big variable because the treatment, really, we don't have a treatment. We do a symptom control. So you're just trying to, oh, he feels anxiety. Okay, so give him this drug. Yeah, but that drug gives him this. Oh, so give him that drug. And we're just kind of running after managing symptoms. So there is no treatment, but it is a symptom management. That's what is in place right now. So I said, okay, what about self-regulatory techniques? How can that help us? Because in studying in this course, we studied so many things that spur this, that inspired this in me. I'm like, wow, yoga nidra, pranayama, the asanas. There's so many things that we've studied that we know how they, changing the breath, how that changes our physiology. So that's what the fifth part is going to discuss, or already discusses, is the conventional protocol versus the self-regulatory techniques. An interesting part of this is that also self-regulatory techniques, not only do they alter you physiologically, but also most patients, when they leave the clinic, they don't always stick to their medication. So if you are able to have the discipline, which is another factor, to apply self-regulatory techniques, then you have a better control, a true improvement, because now the person is involved in that instead of just taking a pill. The minute he stops taking the pill, your work is gone. Not with self-regulatory techniques. If you're just keeping them up, then you can find a stabilization, longer-term stabilization. So, and I forgot to say, mindfulness meditation, of course, is really big on that. So then I move on. Okay, so I compare both of those and take a lot of the discussion into consideration. And then in closing, which is the next perspectives. The perspectives. It looks pretty good, actually. According to the National Center for Complementary and Alternative Medicine, 34 to 45% of the U.S. population uses some form of complementary alternative medicine in treating a mental disorder. So that's nice. Of these, 64% indicated using solely prayer or other spiritual practices, and over 50% indicated that it was the only alternative therapy used. So this is more, I found, in private clinics. So all of this began, well, I'll tell you how it began afterwards. So, but anyway, this was more in private clinics is what I found. That's where the complementary alternative techniques are used. In the government clinics, not so much. It's a lot more, you're put into a system, you are treated, there's a symptomatic treatment, and basically it's a revolving door. You're released, and then you have a relapse, and then you come back in, and that seems to be the tendency in the government-run facilities. Whereas in the private clinics, which not everybody has access to, there's a little bit more of the complementary alternative medicine going on. 3 of the websites I wanted to mention are alternativementalhealth.com. That's an international website of resources. And it, let me just go here. It's an international guide to therapists, articles, resources, so people from all over the world can look for therapists and treatments that are alternative and non-drug based. An important thing for me to say at this point is that, of course, I don't have anything against the drugs. I think, if anything, my research has returned that they're actually key in stabilizing someone. It's very difficult for you to stabilize someone who's having a psychotic episode solely through breathing. So you do have to use those. Of course, that's going to be a really key part of stabilization, but it's the treatments that would really benefit if we had more self-regulatory techniques. And then there's Project Soteria was a project where people would come in, and it was a 24/7 application of interpersonal interventions. So it was small and very home-like. So they were very small and very personalized, and a person would be there when you were having something, and they would lead you through a meditation, or, so it's a lot more personalized. Unfortunately, that project was deactivated due to lack of funds. So, but it's a wonderful project, and it's something to keep in mind as a example, right, of a project to maybe revitalize. And then another organization is called powertoyou.org, National Empowerment Center for the Mentally Ill. So they have blogs and articles, meetings, online chats, things like that, because when you're mentally ill, you feel like you're the only one. And so it's really important for them to find a little bit of support in each other, find many times if you are in a psychiatric facility, very few people will come and visit you. Next to none. Nobody really wants to see you anymore. You've worn out all your family members. Everybody's like, I'm done with that person. So it's a really important thing for them to have a forum and that community, sense of community. So very quickly in closing, the next slide, I wanted to say a few words about how all this started. And a friend of mine had her son who had his first psychotic episode when he graduated high school about 3 years ago. And she knew that I practiced yoga and meditation, and he was in a catatonic state in the clinic at the Kaiser Permanente downtown. And she said, she's a nurse, and she didn't want to keep him on these drugs so long. So she just wanted him, now that he was stabilized, to try to get him out of a full lockdown facility. So I went in, I started meditating, and you can't really meditate with a catatonic person, so I would just sit with him, just be with him, a lot of times in silence, kind of emitting a vibration or whatever. And it was interesting because other interns would come and join us, and then from that, he was released from that facility, went to a less security facility in downtown LA where I still volunteer and teach a group there. And so on that note, and these are a few students that I wanted to tell you about their cases, but that's going to take a lot of time, so I want to move on to the fact that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're going to be doing a day at the clinic. And I would love if any of you are interested in conducting an activity that involves something that just brings them, to an interconnectedness, to some kind of interconnectedness or mindfulness. If you could donate your time at the facility, if you could please, there's my phone number, or you can look me up on Facebook, now Paula Smeaton. And that would be great. It would be a wonderful service, and you'll just come out of there so uplifted. I know it seems like a very heavy and morbid subject, but it's actually very uplifting to see the power of life come into the lives of these people. So thank you so much.
Could you tell us a little bit about one of them?
Yes. So, who to choose? Well, very briefly, Jessica. Jessica was at Gateways Mental Hospital in downtown LA, and she had been there for a few years, in, out, and she was actually one of the first, after Alex, who was the original person I was talking about. Jessica was one of the first people that I saw really transform through these practices, because she came in, a lot of them are catatonic. Either catatonic is they don't interact with you. They're just shut, and they're looking down. They drag their feet, they drool. There's not a lot of interaction with the outside. So Jessica was catatonic, and she would come to yoga, you know? It was, that in itself is amazing, and she came for weeks and weeks and weeks. She came for over a year, every week. And as time went by, you know, very few of them even remember to come. It's not a mandatory program. It was very difficult to keep people, you know, coming. But Jessica came every Wednesday, and you literally saw the life coming back into her eyes. And she began asking, what can I read? You know, what is that music you play? I play a lot of culminating music and, you know, things that have therapeutic background in the music as well. And so she began to be a little more and a little more interested, and she got better and better, and her family had completely just left her there. And as she got better, you know, we can't have a lot of interaction for privacy reasons with the students. But one day I went to take her The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, because she wanted something to read, and I thought, this is going to be nice for her, and you know, so I went there, and that day she was being released from the clinic, and her family was all there, you know, to pick her up, and it was just such a wonderful thing to see her go through that, you know, and I snuck my card into the book, because you're not supposed to exchange personal information. But I snuck my card into the book, and I told her, if you ever, you know, are back here, if you need anything, you know, feel free to contact me. And haven't heard from her, but I'm supposing that's good news. So that was one case that was really heartwarming.
How's Alex doing?
Alex is well. He's well. He has been institutionalized a few times again, but he's better. Yeah. You know, Carl is another one who's really well. He's been doing yoga for 2 years, much better. And yeah, anyway. Maynard, very quickly. Maynard is interesting because he came to yoga once, and then he never came again because it made him very uncomfortable. But I talk to him all the time when I'm coming in and out of the clinic. He's outside, sitting on the steps. And he said, you know, yoga changed my life. And I said, you don't even come to yoga. And he said, but I don't know. I don't want to be there in a group doing something, but I come outdoors every day. And I don't really do those things that you did, but I have a feeling I'm doing yoga. And it's making me better. And I said, you are doing yoga. Because he is. There's no rule, right? So that's it. Maynard.
Thank you.